Okay, Nicole, you ready? Good evening. Marysville City Council meeting will now come to order. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Belzer.
Here.
Councilmember Gilchrist.
Here.
Councilmember Hudson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Betticaboli.
Here.
And Mayor Branscombe.
Here. If you would please stand and join in the pledge. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
Not tonight, Mayor.
Well, I understand there is one change. Item number 7 on the agenda will be delayed until, or put off until the next meeting. It's on the consent agenda, as per council request. Okay. Mr. City Attorney, anything to report on closed session otherwise?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we are now going to have council comments, requests. That's the new batting order. We've been doing, the reason the council comments and requests are on the front end of the meeting now is because every meeting up until now, at least in my experience, has been council make comments on sometimes very important matters to 4 blank walls and nobody's watching Zoom anymore. So it's good to get these things on the front end. I'll kick it off. The thing that's weighing most heavily on my mind right now is revenue and risks associated with general fund revenue. In the fiscal year ended last June 30, general fund revenue was 12.8 million approximately. Of that amount, 3.4 million was due to the 1 cent sales tax increase pursuant to Measure C. Now that was passed in 2016 and it's got a it was passed in 2016. It's got a 10-year shelf life. It sunsets, it goes away in 2026. 3.4 million taken out of a 12.8 million revenue line would be a disaster for the city. In my opinion, and I think in reality, an absolute disaster. The other risk item on the agenda, on the revenue line, is the revenue we've been receiving further to the cannabis business in Marysville. This is primarily retail cannabis business, although there is a cannabis lab that is producing some revenue. Once you take the direct cannabis tax and then add to it the non-Measure C sales tax component, that is approximately $1 million. Again, $1 million out of 12.8. Losing $1 million would make things extremely difficult for the city. Losing half of that would make things very difficult for the city. I'll discuss that more. We've got an agenda item coming up and I don't want to cross lines on that. But those are the things that are on my mind. When I'm thinking of, in terms of the Measure C sales tax, is notwithstanding the fact I was a tax lawyer for a lot of years and the tax man was not my favorite person, without this, the city would sink. And so we need to think about lifting the, and this requires a plebiscite, it requires a vote of the people to either extend or continue without a cap, without a sunset provision on it. I'll leave it to that for right now. There'll be more discussion on this, but that was on the top of my mind. I wanted to share it. Vice Mayor Betticaboli.
No comments at this time.
Councilman Hudson.
No comments at this time with the ability to reserve for making comments at the end.
We can do it again. Councilman Belton.
I just want to say I attended the grand opening of our local 228 building on 9th and Ramirez, and congratulations to, sorry, I've been told I need to speak more into the microphone. So congratulations to Mr. Molnar and everybody involved in 228. It's a great asset to the city, and they did just a bang up job on that building. I think it looks phenomenal and is rivaling another building in that same neighborhood as far as quality goes. So anyways, at this time, that's all I have, but maybe I'll have more later. Thank you.
Councilman Gilchrist.
No comment at this time.
Everybody's Sebastian. Okay. Let's see, we will move on. We are now on the discussion and action calendar, and I have a paragraph to read to y'all. All matters in this section of the agenda are discussed and will be acted on individually. Members of the public may request to speak on any of these items for up to 3 minutes when calls are made for public comment. If you'd like to comment and you are attending in person, please complete a speaker's card and return it to the city clerk. When called upon, please go to the podium and address the council. If you're participating via Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom. When you're called on by the city clerk, you'll be unmuted and you can address the council. Whether you're here in person or via Zoom, when called upon, please give your name clearly for audio recording. If you have any documentation you'd like to distribute to the council, send it to the city clerk, 526 C Street, Marysville, California, 95901. Okay, the first item on the discussion action calendar. Pass a motion to adopt an appropriately numbered resolution approving the program supplement agreement and designating a signing authority to the city manager for all Caltrans documents that are required during the construction and completion of the 5th Street Road Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Jim Shad.
So everybody on council, I believe, is familiar with 5th Street Project and has been very interested in getting that moving. This is hopefully the final group of documents to execute with Caltrans. The supplement agreement is really just a revision of, I believe, our master agreement. And it would allow us to move forward with the 5th Street project. Once we sign this, we will be ready to go out to bid. And if there are any questions regarding that, certainly we'll try to answer them.
I think we go first to public comment. Any public comment on this topic, Madam Clerk?
Not tonight, Mayor.
None. Okay, then the council, any members of the council, questions or comments?
I'm just curious, what do we have an anticipation of what the, how long the bid process will take?
I believe we would keep it out for roughly 60 days. We could shorten that, but I don't know if there's value to doing that based on how far we are into the year and the winter months coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather leave it out there a little longer for that reason, as well as the fact that it looks like we might be getting some relief on construction and materials costs coming forward. The goal, though, is to really do the heavy work in the springtime of next year.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So whatever contractors awarded the contract, do we leave it up to them to make the start date, or do we have desired start date from staff?
They will commit to a start date, I believe, in the bid specification, in their answer to the bid.
In their answer to the bid. Okay, thank you.
And they typically provide a detailed schedule of what that is going to be.
Any other questions, comments? What's the will of the council?
I make a motion to approve
We have a motion to.
Second.
We have a second. We have a second. I heard it.
I
All
did.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, that's unanimous. Okay, next item on the action and discussion calendar. Pass a motion to authorize the city manager to execute, one, a memorandum of understanding with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments and AECOM, whoever that is, to accept a $450,000 repetitive regional early action planning grant on behalf of the city. Two, a memorandum of understanding with SACOG for $40,000 non-competitive REAP grant, $490,000 total now, we've moved it up. Funds to complete a green zone specific plan and authorize the city manager to take all actions necessary to execute the agreements. Three, authorize a consultant agreement with AECOM, which must be a private entity, to prepare a comprehensive general plan update in conjunction with the specific plan and concurrent zoning code update. And four, authorize consultant agreements with management advisory services, also an entity, to coordinate and oversee the work on behalf of the city. Mr. City Manager, would you translate that as best you can, and then we can proceed?
And Kathy Pease is here to present. Basically, this is part of our general plan, specific plan effort. We had dedicated some funds to our general plan, but at the same time, we received, roughly the same time, we received approval from the Sacramento Area Council of Governments to do some specific plans with roughly $450,000 worth of funding attached to that. It made sense to do both of those efforts simultaneously and get some economy of scales. With that, combining funding, what it has allowed us to do is, rather than spending only general fund dollars, we're able to consolidate and leverage some of the SACOG funds. AECOM is a contractor that has been pre-qualified by SACOG. They're a very reputable consulting firm that does general plans quite often, and as well as specific plans. And so we opted to utilize SACOG's competitive process and forego our own for this project so that we can move forward with both the general plan and the specific plan.
Yeah, they have tremendous experience. And Ms. Pease, you ready to present? Shall we proceed? You want to get that microphone turned on. There you go. And get it as close to your, there you go. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Baranscombe and members of the City Council. I am Kathy Pease. I am a planning consultant with Management Advisory Services, providing support to the city. So before you tonight is something that I think is very exciting. We've got the opportunity to update our general plan. The last time the general plan was updated was in 1983. So this gives us a great opportunity, like Mr. Shad said, to leverage grant funds so that we can update that planning document. We also will take advantage of preparing the next level of document, which is a specific plan in an area of the city. And it's our hope that we can streamline development, help with economic development opportunities, and look at traffic calming and traffic that's going on in the area. And at the same time, as you know, I recently brought before you the housing element, and the State Housing and Community Development Department had given us some comments, and they asked us, or gave us the charge, to update the zoning code over the next 3 years. So also leveraging these grant funds, we'll be able to do that. So those are the three things that we're looking at, and I can answer specific questions if you have on any of those components. And I should note that we're also going to prepare one environmental impact report to cover all of those actions. So if a developer comes in and we've set the parameters, what we're hoping is they can reuse that document and it will help facilitate economic development opportunities.
Let me ask you, Mr. City Manager, this appears abundantly important to me. And having these funds to accomplish this from SACOG are wonderful. What are the specifics that the public will see out of this effort?
Well, first of all, there is a significant amount of public input required for this. And the first thing they'll see is likely public meetings to address their concerns. In the end, what they see is there are several elements to the housing or to the general plan that give a very broad structure and vision of what the city would look like over the next, 35 years? Typically?
Usually general plans are 10 to 20 years. So this
Okay.
one's been quite long. Typically they're 20 to 30 years.
20 years. And, typically in a city other than Marysville, where we're not constrained by growth, it would focus a lot on growth and how that growth would occur. Here, I think this plan would really focus more on redevelopment type activity and how we move forward with that.
Thank you. Is there, Madam Clerk, is there any public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Our first speaker will be Kelly
Can you lean
Richcreek.
forward a little bit and get that a little louder?
Our next speaker will be Kelly Richcreek.
Thank you. And thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I was hoping to hear your comments first before I spoke. Okay. Of course, this is exciting. I'm sure you're just so excited about updating our general plan. I did have a few questions. I'll go back to the questions and just cover what's important. And the mayor hit on the first one is public input. I did look through it. I saw a few things of public input. But I just want to, I know that we have mostly new members here and even new staff, to make them aware that we do need to start getting better about our public input. And one thing that I was concerned about is I was wondering, I don't think, and I've been following what's going on with the Planning Commission, and I'm really curious about the designated green zone area of the city. So the Planning Commission should be aware of this already, and I don't believe they are so we need to get better about engaging our Planning Commission, because they are people that live here, and they're the ones that represent and get that input as you are, our representatives. And the reason, I don't mean to sound so harsh, but some people might be aware that the few years prior to Jim being the city manager, that's been overlooked, and I feel confident that this city council is going to be more engaging the public and getting their input and doing things how we're supposed to as a city, and getting that Planning Commission involved, getting the public involved. But I'm a little concerned because we don't know about this plan. So I'm just going to tell you why I was concerned. So it sounds wonderful when we read these. It's always written like it's always the hot buttons. Yeah, we want all this stuff. We want the traffic calming. That's what we've been hearing. but let's drill it down. The staff proposes to prepare a specific plan that would comprehensively plan the designated green zone area of the city. The specific plan offers a unique opportunity to develop. I'm not going to read it. Everyone can read it. And it goes through all the wonderful things that we want. But so my thought was, it sounds like it's already written. The plan is already written, but we're going to prepare it. And I like the preparing it because then we can be involved in this. So I'm wondering, I'm curious about what is this designated green zone? I didn't see anything to really drill down.
We've hit the 3 minutes. I'll give you another 30 seconds to conclude.
Okay, so yeah, this is why we need more public input, because it takes more than just 3 minutes. It's important to get that public because we got to earn their trust, because that is something what the mayor brought up about our Measure C. We have to keep our promises, and we want plans that don't ignore plans that we want. Discussion and input. We don't want any plans that ignore things like, for example, our master bicycle plan. So I think I feel confident in you, and I read through, one of the questions, and maybe you can, is it all the elements, all the elements of the plan? Or is it just, because it was a little hard to understand, it was saying pursuant to chapter health and safety code. I think it was just meaning what it says, pursuant. It's talking about that it focuses on the housing and the 6th cycle of the regional housing needs. But my understanding is this update going to handle more than the housing element? Will this fund get to all the elements?
I'll tell you what, I'll let
okay.
Mr. Shebb, do you want to respond to that? And then we'll move on. Thank you.
Sure, and Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, but the general plan will encompass all of the elements that the state requires. And Kathy may be able to list those off the top of her head. I can't, but the state is really focused on housing at this point for obvious reasons. And so there will probably be an emphasis on housing.
So 2 things. The housing element will not be updated with this since we just did that. And we also, the new requirement was to tie our safety element to the housing element. And so we are going through the Planning Commission with that right now, and we'll bring that to you in the next month or 2. So those 2 elements won't be included, but we will be updating the land use section, traffic, conservation, open space, noise, safety, air quality, and environmental justice. Those are required by state law. And then on the question on the green zone, that's designated by the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. And so that's to help with infill and traffic. Oh, and then, yes, we'll also have a very robust public outreach. We'll be forming committees, and we're putting a list together of stakeholders. So we will want to get the word out and get people to sign up so they can provide input.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other public comment on that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker will be Charles Sharp.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
3 minutes.
Hello? Yes. Oh, thank you. Charles Sharp in Oregon House. I'm going to jump right in here. When Yuba County did its general plan update a number of years ago, I think they used AECOM, and they kind of just outsourced everything. And it was kind of a mistake for them to do that. AECOM came up with animal units, like pigs were 2 animal units, horses were 4, cows were 6. And they said farmers could only have so many animal units on their land per acre. It didn't go over very well. The company created an urban plan, took an urban plan idea and tried to made it into a rural agricultural plan. And it was kind of, pushed into that. So my suggestion is don't lose control. Be sure you're on top of what they're doing, review everything. Just don't let this company kind of take over because it's easy. Just be sure that you're on, watching what they're doing, reviewing everything, and stay on top of them. You run the show. Don't let this consulting company.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. We have a city manager who will be very diligent in overseeing this, and we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you. Madam Clerk, any other public comment?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Councilman Belzin.
Yeah, Ms. Pease, if you could come back up, please. And I just wanted to kind of ask and stay in the same context in which you left with, but each one of those phases that we're going to go through and look at, right, of what we need to update and how we need to do it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that each one of those phases, the Planning Commission is going to be very involved in that process, and there will be ample opportunities for public comment and during that time, right? In a sense, we're just hitting the start button tonight. And if I read correctly in our staff report, there's estimated about a 2-year process before completion, right?
That's correct. We have not started yet. Tentative schedule is we will probably do a kickoff kind of workshop. In addition, I think I will be going to Planning Commission November 10th with an overview of what a general plan is so the Planning Commission can get up to speed, and I'll give an overview and allow them to have questions. And then we also will have probably a workshop. So the tentative schedule is if you all approve the contracts tonight, the consultant will prepare technical studies between November and May of next year. We'll begin outreach probably after the holidays, about January and February, when we have some base information. And then one of the first items is for the community to help us craft some guiding principles so that we can figure out what the vision is going forward. And then draft documents will be available for public review probably between May 2020 to May 2023. The grants go until July of 2023. So the majority of the work will need to be completed by then. And we probably will have an environmental impact report possibly at the end of 2022 once we have all the documents prepared.
So this time frame right now, between now and the holidays, is our opportunity to grandstand and cheerlead on this effort and try to get as much public momentum as possible. So going into the winter,
that would be great.
Midwinter, we have a lot of public input. Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Shad.
If I may, I also want to comment, just indicating that I have in at least 2 Planning Commission meetings forewarned the Planning Commission that this is coming. There's not really been any actual work to do at this point, but they're going to be busy.
Councilman Gilchrist.
I have no comments as I want to pass the motion. So if there are any other councilmen that would like to have any questions, I'd like to move right on to pass the motion. Of course.
I just have a question probably for Jim to clarify. We've got, the zoning specific in general, we've got $1,040,000, but then under the compensation in the agreement, it says $883,000. So I'm confused with those 2 numbers.
I'll let Kathy explain that.
So there is an attachment to the staff report that has all of the numbers. So what AECOM's portion, and as Jim had said, they are a consulting firm that we're hiring for the majority of the effort. Their portion is $800. I also will be overseeing a portion, so approximately $100,000 to oversee the general plan, the specific plan, and the zoning over the next 2 years. Contract planning staff is a portion of that amount.
And did we have contingency in there?
Oh, yes, very important. We have
Yeah, I
a
saw the
pretty
contingency.
robust contingency in here because we want to make sure that we're conservative and we don't have to keep coming back if something that we didn't see.
No,
comes up.
I saw that, I understood that.
Mhm.
So the 883,780, that will be going out to people you are subcontracting to.
The city is contracting directly, right? But I'll be helping to oversee the work.
Okay.
So, yeah, I want to clarify. She is not subcontracting. She is helping us manage that contract.
And that's the other 100.
Yes. And I think to the gentleman's comment on the phone, this size of a project, I feel very comfortable having Kathy's help do it.
So that difference is about 130,000. That is for overseeing the project, correct?
And the contingency as well.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I don't see any. What's the will of the council?
I'd like to make a motion to
We have-
authorize
we
the
have-
city manager.
We have a motion to pass
I'll second it.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Let's see. We are now at item number 3. Pass a motion to adopt an appropriately numbered resolution approving the proposed Regional Waste Management Authority Fourth Amended and Restated Joint Powers Agreement and Regional Waste Management Authority Amended Regional Agency Formation Agreement. Mr. Jim Shad, would you please explain that to us?
I will attempt to do so, but we do have some experts here. Our city attorney is very familiar with these documents, as well as Keith Martin, who is the administrator for the RWMA. Basically, two things have driven these changes to the agreement. One is, I think the largest one is state regulatory requirements related to Senate Bill 1383. And the state has really pushed to have local or regional agencies improve upon diversion of organics and food waste materials, basically to divert them from the landfill. So the regional agency is going to be our mechanism for managing and ensuring compliance on the majority of those items. The other element that is independent but somewhat related is we are having a change in leadership at the RWMA. Their staff, including Keith, will be retiring shortly. And so this agreement, this set of agreements does address that and really beefs up the staff and some of their authority and responsibility so that we can move forward and meet all of these new requirements. The staff report was quite lengthy, and I'm sure everybody had fun reading that. I don't want to belabor it if we don't have to, but would open it up to questions if council has them at this point in time.
I think we need to go to public comment first.
Okay.
Any public comment on that matter, Madam Clerk?
Not tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Council members? Seeing none, what's the will of the council? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I have no comment.
I wanted to comment, but I got no comment. I get it. Will of the council, please.
I make a motion to pass.
I
Motion, we
second.
have a second.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And that was unanimous. Okay, we are now moving to a presentation by, thank you for being here, sir. We are now moving to a presentation by our friend, David Reed. Let's see, and we'll do the presentation first, and then I'll read this paragraph about consent calendar. Thank you, David.
I'll
Please
do the
proceed.
presentation first. Good evening, Mayor Branska, members of the council, staff, friends. Thank you all for being here. Before I begin the formal presentation about a different project, I just wanted to provide a quick update. Several of us met with City Manager Shad a few weeks ago about a Yuba County history trail project with signage, many of which would be located on historic sites and properties in the city of Marysville. I spoke to the Yuba Water Agency. They were one of the funding sources for this project, and the funding's been deferred until next spring. So I'll get back to you and we'll get with the Planning Commission and go through the steps that Mr. Shad outlined. So, but tonight I've got something else to discuss. Nicole, take it away. Kind of an exciting project called the Cotton Rosser Bronze Statue Project. I think some of you have heard about this. Some of you have been quite involved with it. Next slide, please. Just a reminder about us. Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture is the local representative of the California Arts Council. It's our 40-year anniversary, so we're going out in style here. Next slide. Great board of directors, 3 now full-time staff members. So we're moving on up. Next. I just said that, so next please. So here it is, front page of the Appeal Democrat a week or so ago. A group of community leaders and citizens got together, gosh, over a year ago and started to kick off this idea of doing something in honor of Mr. Rosser and his tremendous contributions over the decades to the community, to rodeo culture and the whole rodeo industry. And I've studied him quite a bit in the last few weeks, more than ever, and had no idea the depth of his reach. So next. We did an initial announcement via this postcard designed by our friend and committee member, Vanessa Helder. Many of you know more about Mr. Rosser than I'll ever know, and having grown up and lived here, and I'm kind of still the new kid in town. I'm 12 years in or whatever, but you know, truly a living legend. Next. That was the back of the card. We've got a few out on the table if you haven't seen that. A little information about the project. Basically, Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture has been asked to be the fiscal sponsor for the project rather than creating a whole new nonprofit organization. We're well established. We talked to our bookkeeper. It's set up in our record keeping as a separate account. So we're collecting those donations. Let me show you a little bit more about the project. Next. Lots of great images of Mr. Rosser. Vanessa is one of many photographers who have documented. I love that Ariat ad that's been in some of the magazines on the top right there. But that image on the left with it doffing his hat is kind of the look you'll see. We're not going to show you what the statue is going to look like tonight, but next Saturday you can come get a preview. Next.
This coming Saturday.
This coming. Did I say next Saturday? Yeah, this coming Saturday. Thank you. Councilman Gilchrist has been very involved with creating many design concepts. You'll see some of those on display in our Burroughs, not the Burroughs Theater, but actually in the Art Gallery at Yuba-Sutter Arts, 624 East Street, this coming Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. And Stuart's put a lot of time and effort into this and kind of visioning what this will look like. Next. The location, I'm sorry, I didn't put one of those little indicators. Oh, there it is, that little, no, that's the other building. Stuart, you know this better than I do. Oh, there it is. I did put a little, yeah, there's a little horse and rider right there. I did mark it. That's the location. Park Plaza, it's the park area to the right of the Silver Dollar Saloon and the Bacchae Temple entrance. In other words, as I wrote in the press release, Mr. Rosser will be able to watch the cattle drive, you know, forevermore in perpetuity. So next, that's another street view of the park. And that's actually an image of a bronze statue of Alex Madonna down at the Madonna Inn in San Luis Obispo. We've been kind of using that as an example. We're not doing a, you know, bucking bronco kind of statue. It's going to be a much more passive, docile cotton, sort of as he enters the rodeo arena, as he often does. Next. The artist is a gentleman named Jeff Wolf. We met him through a family recommendation of a artist that he partners with, Bill Burkhart. Bill's not well, he's elderly, and he will consult on the project, but Jeff has taken the lead. Jeff will be here this coming weekend, and we're very pleased with that. He is bringing the model. He has taken it upon himself to create the model without any funding. We haven't given him a penny. He's so excited about this project. He just, I talk to him every other day. He's a phenomenal artist. I mean, Western themes aside, his portraiture in clay and bronze, the bronze statues he's created for a tremendous list of clients is second to none. So check him out at jeffwolfstudios.com and meet him this coming weekend. Next, there's some examples of his work. Anybody watch Longmire? That kind of modern day Western sheriff show. That actor, Robert Taylor, I mean, you can't get any closer than that portrait of him there in the middle. Next. This is called, excuse me, Rodeo. That was the model. And then next is the actual bronze sculpture. Pretty dynamic. I'm sorry, I forget the location where that one wound up. Next. There's Jeff with Ty Murray. Any rodeo enthusiasts in the crowd will know that Ty Murray is top of the food chain in the rodeo world, 9 times professional bull riding champion. And I actually received that note of the text on the top right. It's probably hard to read. Is actually a testimonial email I got directly from Mr. Murray, who used to be married to Jewel, the singer. Anyway, great story, Ty Murray. So I'm learning a lot through this process. That's Jeff's studio in the lower right. He's out of Spanish Fork, Utah. Next. There's some of these cards out front. This is the invitation to the Meet the Artist event that we're hosting in our gallery at Yuba-Sutter Arts, 4 to 6 p.m. We'll have refreshments. Jeff is bringing some other pieces of his artwork, and he will have the, excuse me, tabletop. It's called a maquette, but it basically means model of the sculpture that he's creating. He's been getting direction from us as far as the pose, the posture, the type of horse, the tack, everything down to his belt and belt buckle and chaps. So we'll be unveiling that during our event at the Arts Council. Excuse me. Next. Next steps and timeline. We'll fine tune this as we go along, but I assume we'll need to get with the Planning Commission. We'll continue fundraising. We've got created budgets, so we know we're going to need site plans, elevations, engineered foundation plans, and lighting design. We do want to light it at night to help offset some of the potential damage or vandalism. We'll continue fundraising. We'll finalize the maquette here in the next month or two. Jeff knows there'll be some changes based on his meeting with our committee this weekend. We'll continue fundraising. We'll begin site and foundation work, we hope, late spring 2022 while we continue fundraising. And I'll give you the big number here in just a minute. We'll cast the bronze statue, we hope, next summer, and install the statue in Plaza Park next August prior to the Stampede and all those activities, and hopefully a dedication ceremony right around that time. This is a $270,000 project, and we're working toward that goal. So major donors will be recognized. If you've got an extra 100,000, we'll even give you a bronze copy of the statue, of the tabletop version of the statue itself. Next slide. What do I have left? Just, yeah, thanks for your support. That's the project. We're in high gear. We hope to get a few donations this weekend. And hey, if it's $25 or $100 and they're coming in, and we've made a beginning. So look for more on this as the weeks and months ahead go by. So any questions?
And you said $270,000 is the estimated cost?
Yes, sir. I've created a budget. That's all in, all the site planning, engineering, site work, as best we can tell. The bronze casting is the heavy hit. That's $160,000. We're talking 7 tons of bronze, and this is a 1 1/4 times life-size statue. There'll be a concrete base. The final configuration of that foundation is still to be determined. So we'll see how that goes, but they're healthy budgets. I got a pretty strong construction background. So
well, I will be very proud to write a check to that to help accomplish that.
Yeah,
At least 1/270th of it, maybe more.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's Yuba-Sutter Arts-Rosser Project. So,
I'll have my checkbook with me. You can help me with that.
yeah, come by if you can after duck hunting that morning. So,
Anyway, I think this is a magnificent endeavor. Cotton is obviously larger than life, and we'd like to get this done while he can still enjoy it.
it's a tremendous location, yes, sir. And to your point, that's exactly what we're trying to achieve.
Yes.
So we're going to put it in high gear and do the best we can to round up the funds and keep it moving forward. And it does speak to those issues I've talked about before in terms of cultural tourism. I mean, people will come to see this. This gentleman, as you well know, has such a far reach in the Western, community, and
He's got a global reputation.
he truly does.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, but
Any other comments from the council?
I'm just excited to see this come together, and you guys hit on it a little bit, but in the rodeo world, Cotton revolutionized how rodeo was done. And, he's like the Jeff Bezos of rodeo, or Zuckerberg.
yeah, absolutely.
I
don't think he's going to space,
all those
though.
big names.
He's
In
not
that
going into
arena,
space.
he's at that tier, and this is the least that we can do as a community to honor him. So I think this is great. I'm excited to see it come together.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rosser and his wife Karen are expected to be at the Arts Council for the event Saturday afternoon. So,
Any other comments, questions, anything from the public? Anybody want to say anything? David, thank you so much for being here. I will see you on Saturday afternoon, 4 to 6.
yes, sir.
At the Arts Center.
Arts
here in
Council, the
Marysville.
gallery. Yeah, we'll be the theater. We're just finishing up our remodel. We'll talk about that later, but we'll be in the art gallery, the building right next door
Look
through the
forward to seeing it.
courtyard. Wonderful.
sir.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving ahead to the community and consent calendar, and I read a paragraph here. Your indulgence. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already on the agenda. In other words, anything you want to talk about that's relevant to the city of Marysville, are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. If you would like to comment and you're attending in person, please complete a speaker's card and return that to the city clerk. When called upon, go to the podium to address the council. If participating via Zoom, raise your hand via Zoom, and when called upon, you'll be unmuted and you can address the council. Whether you're here in person or attending via Zoom, when called upon, please give your name clearly for audio recording. You're requested to address your comments to the mayor and council and not to the audience. By state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation you'd like to share with the council, send it to the city clerk, 526 C Street, Marysville, 95901. Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to comment?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. Our first speaker will be Eduardo Sequeiros.
Eduardo, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Just have a simple, could be slash complaint. I had an issue going on my business, our business, and so we needed the police. The officer who came, exceptional. I mean, the response from the officer was exceptional. Everything he did was to the book. I decided to go to the police station asking for a form to give the officer the proper commendation, which I was told there is no such form. I asked for a complaint form. They told me there is no such form. Per state law and per the police department policy, there has to be those forms available, not only in English, but in several languages. Next day I went again, they sent me to either the website, which is not available on the website. Then they told me to go to the library. I want to handle police business at the police station, not at the library. Anyway, I went to the library, they couldn't find it also. So that's my issue. I guess you're gonna have to work on it and have those forms available so I can give the officer, it's Officer Perez, his commendation for his exceptional work. And we have to have those forms available for the public upon request at the lobby. That led me to go to the city website, and it's not user-friendly. So I guess we have to address also those issues, whoever is dealing with the website for the city. And that's my only comment and
Thank you.
complaint today. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. The next speaker will be Martha Siqueiros.
Nicole, you've gotten it just right. It took me a little while to get it right too, so don't feel bad. So I would like to also add my concerns about the forms not being available. What if we don't have, what if we're not, there's many people who are not tech friendly. So it is nice to be able to go to the police department, but I also, again, Officer Perez was just phenomenal. His attitude towards his job, what he did for us was wonderful. It was very refreshing to hear someone say, this is what I do, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I was like, oh, what a nice man. So, and also I commend you, Chief, on your pink, Real Men Wear Pink, for breast cancer awareness. So thank you. So parking is what my concern is.
That's on the agenda.
Yes, it is.
Then-
So shall I wait to speak for
Please,
that?
please do.
Okay, then I'll wait for that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
No further speakers at this point.
Thank you. Okay. We are now on the consent calendar. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine and are therefore approved by one motion unless a council member or the city manager first requests the matter be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. We've already announced that item number 7 will be postponed to a future meeting. What's the will of the council? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Madam Clerk, unanimous. Okay. Make sure I don't do something twice here. Okay, let's see. I'd like to have just a quick 3 or 4 minute recess before we proceed.
All aboard!
We can show you how. Live streaming can be simple and not expensive. You may already have the basic tools right in your hand. But it's more than just pushing live to communicate effectively. That's where Yuba-Sutter.live and Live Streaming YS on Facebook can help you. Make it easy to jump in. Just give us a call at 530-301-2931 or visit our website, www.yuba-sutter.live. Yuba-Sutter's home of live streaming and live streaming tools, live streaming services, technology, and training. Live streaming is Yuba-Sutter.live. Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture as performed by the Yuba-Sutter Symphony and the audience. Paper bag substituting for cannon fire here, and I think they did a very good job.
Well, that was quite obviously a welcome break. Here we go. Back in order. We will move to the discussion and action calendar. All matters in this section of the agenda are discussed and will be acted on individually. Members of the public may request to speak on any of these items for up to 3 minutes when called upon for public comment. If you would like to comment and you are attending this meeting in person, please complete a speaker's card and return it to the city clerk. When called upon, go to the podium and address the council. If you are participating via Zoom and you would like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom. When called upon by the city clerk, you will be unmuted and you can address the city council. Whether here in person or attending via Zoom and called upon, please give your name clearly for audio recording. If you'd like to share any documentation with the council, please send it to the city clerk, 526 C Street, Marysville, 95901. Okay, and the first item is parking discussion requested by yours truly. Further to discussion we've had at previous meetings. We've made a promise to certain business people that we would do this last week or week before, and here we are, we're finally doing it, and I'm glad we're getting to it. There is concern about parking. This is not parking in general, but parking downtown. And I think I would invite the folks from D Street. I'm sorry, I'm not good on the names. If you would like to come forward and share your thoughts on the parking problem, you've spoken about it before, but I think you are the best spokespeople for this topic, and I'll join in with you. I've got some thoughts I want to share, but I think it's best coming from you initially, if that's okay with you. There we go. Turn on the microphone. Get
Okay,
up close
so
when you're speaking, and thank you.
Martha Siqueiros, My Boutique at 423 D Street. This is my friend Marjorie Wagner from Uniquely, which is right next door to us. We have, in the last 2.5 years that we've been in business, seen nothing. There's been problems with the parking. There's no place to park. We have several customers who sometimes are a little on the elderly side and can't necessarily walk. They would prefer a space where they can just walk right in. And some don't mind, but it's not just my business that I'm seeing. Like, I think I've spoken before about this. My daughter has 2 young sons, age 3 and age 1. One day she wanted to go to the gym. Mom, can you watch the babies while I go work out? Of course, what grandmother is going to say no? And she circled the block several times. She had to park 2 blocks away and walk the 2 little boys. Luckily, I was able to pull the door shut and run and meet her halfway. But that meant crossing, I think this was like at 5, 6 o'clock. There's traffic. So that meant trying to cross 5th Street to come to my boutique, then for her to go across the D Street to the gym. So as a grandmother, as a citizen, that frightens me that a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old with their mother, with all of the baggage that comes with children, diaper bags and whatnot, made it difficult for her to get to her workout. So I don't know. I have done a little bit of research. I'm not knowledgeable in parking and laws and whatnot, but I have done a little bit of research. And we do have some parking. There is a parking area over by the post office that says public parking, but it's very horrible. There's the potholes and whatnot. Maybe we could do something to make it a little more user-friendly, to be able to park there and use that as parking, or put some sort of time limit on parking for patrons. I've seen, and I don't really want to pull that business out, but I've seen gym members who come in and they just park. They don't care. They're sitting there. Employees are parking. The gym employees are parking on the front street. They do have a parking area behind their building that they could use. I've seen their training zone, car parked in front of my business. So, I mean, it's just, there's no place for anyone. And I know Marjorie has many, many stories about the parking that causes her grief as well. And it's not just our business. There's several businesses who have complained to us, but we're the ones willing to come and talk.
Marjorie, would you like to speak?
Sure, I would.
Thank you. Get that microphone down close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's a picture of every day that I come to work. The street is entirely filled up with cars. There are no parking spaces any day of the week anymore.
And you're suggesting, or you believe that most of that parking is related to training zone?
It is 100%, because they're running across the street. I see them grabbing their bag, and they pull in front of my store, run across the street, and it's a constant flow of people coming from across the street. I don't begrudge people, to park, but they do have hourly classes, and they have to make that hourly class. And I'll give you an example of a couple of examples that have happened lately. Two of my customers, very elderly people, they started coming from Sacramento. So they came and they bought 3 very expensive items, but they drove around for an entire hour and were not able to find parking in front of my store, anywhere near my store. So they came back that was last week. They came back on Friday, and the same thing. They drove around for about 45 minutes, and a man came in, he was nice. He goes, I have an idea. He just had knee surgery. They were able to park a block away over by the brick, and he carried all of their stuff to their car for them. I mean, it was very nice. I have very nice customers, but it becomes not only impossible kind of to do business, because I sell large things. My main thing is stained glass lamps now, and Tiffany lamps, and they're very, it's an upgrade on the whole street. I mean, having beautiful Tiffany lamps, and they're very fragile, and like if someone tries to park out front of my store, there's actually a fight between the people from the gym who have to be at their class in 5 minutes, and they'll fight my customer for parking spaces. I have no ability to get my customers in ever. The entire block is completely taken with the gym business, and there is no place for retail. All I'm asking is please designate a couple of spaces, 2 or 3 spaces for my store so that I can stay in business. It's gotten that bad. And I've even got customers saying, I'm looking for other places for you to move. I haven't asked them to look, but they're actually offering to move me. They'll even pay, some of them will even help me pay to move me somewhere else so they can park. And that's some elderly people who are very regular customers. They come in every week and they purchase quite a bit of merchandise. And I'm drawing people from not only this area, Yuba. I'm on my credit card list. My main place of business is Sacramento. Most of my customers come from Sacramento now. Then I have Yuba, and Grass Valley is third. And I have everyone comes in and complains about the parking. It's like the first thing in the door. Oh my God, the parking. You know, it used to be, oh my God, COVID, but now it's, oh my God, parking. And just in one day, last Saturday, I asked people just to sign, the people who couldn't find parking. This is one day, that many people in one day. I just said, please provide parking spaces for this store at uniquely 425 D Street. And that many people signed in one day who complained about the parking. I just asked them to sign their name. And it would be dozens and dozens of people complain all the time.
Ladies, would you remain there? I need to ask for other public comment, and then we can get into a conversation. I'd like to bring the city manager into this. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker will be Patrick Rippey on Zoom.
Welcome, Patrick. Hello, Patrick.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. Please proceed.
Yes, I'm Patrick Rippey. I own Uniquely with Marjorie. She's my wife. And I've had many occasions when I was there carrying customers' items to their cars blocks away. And, you know, it's really hard to run a business in that particular area when our customers cannot find parking, and Marjorie's there, not always have anybody with her to help the customers carry their stuff. And so it would be really great if the city could give us 3 spaces in front of our store for our customers. If they could designate 3 spaces, that's all we ask. We have 2 storefronts there, and that would help us out tremendously. It's just, I hate to see D Street lose business because of the parking problem. And that's what's happening is we're losing business. The city is losing revenue. You know, it's a lose-lose situation. So if the city could please give us parking spaces to help us out, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, any other public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker will be Kelly Rich Creek.
Kelly, please come forward. Ladies, Kelly's a little shy about the COVID. If you could give her some room.
So I didn't even see this on the agenda, so I'm glad I stuck around. I have a different view, totally different view. Just to give you a little background, I do own a building down there with 3 businesses in downtown off of 4th Street. I walk to downtown from my house on 8th Street, and I see the gym as just to picture this, I'll start with the gym because there seems to be some complaints. Picture the downtown without the gym. Who would come downtown? I mean, we got some businesses that bring businesses downtown, but that gym brings people from all over, and that's an opportunity for our businesses to get their business. I did bring some solutions. You know, I always like solutions, so I'll cover those later. Just want to say that some of the things that we might be able to do that help is we do have some parking really close to their businesses, the parking lot, but we don't really have good signage to point public parking. We could have maybe some better signage pointing to the parking. Was on our agenda that I'm not going to go into because I'm limited on time, but please, I would love to follow up on that. Down on 4th Street, next to the building, we have Sierra Central. And Sierra Central, although they have a nice big parking lot, where do their customers park? In front of our building. And we don't complain because, you know, that's an opportunity for that person parking to go to the bank to see what's there if we have something to attract them. So think about that we want people to come downtown. And from my experience in other towns, and towns that are just hopping and buzzing and have lots of retail going on, they have a real parking problem. You talk about not finding parking, you cannot find parking, you find parking 5 blocks away, right? People don't complain. They know if they're gonna go there, they have to walk more than a block. So I can understand we do have some handicaps, some elderly people. So one of the solutions could be on each block. Well, we might already have it, and I'm not aware. So I just saw this in the back, and I haven't checked it out. 1 handicap spot per block, or maybe these people that are coming don't have a handicap sticker. So maybe we have a senior over 75 or 80 parking spot for the elderly, which would be nice for the people that can't walk a block. The parking, if you do go down there, check it out, councilman, different times a day. There's parking spaces. I was down there, you know, in the midst of.
If you could wrap it up, Kelly.
Parking and right down on, you know, there's spaces, but it's just the problem for their spaces because it's from the gym. Owners of the businesses are parking in front of their businesses. Hey, how about you park at the general parking, and you walk to work? That frees up more spaces.
10 seconds.
Encourage that. And wayfinding signs for businesses would help our businesses, and maps to those locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, a different opinion. I'm going to send it around to the members of the council now who are interested in addressing this. Oh, we have one more public comment. Thank you for catching that for me.
Our final speaker will be Eduardo Siqueiros.
Eduardo.
Hi, thanks again. I do understand some people don't like our idea of having more parking for our businesses. Actually, in about a year and a half, on a council meeting, someone mentioned that when you go to the mall, you are expected to walk a long distance. People are not going to the mall when they come to our businesses in downtown. My problem is when the customers that cannot walk because they're older are complaining and saying, hey, I can't go to your store, I can go to the candy store because there is no parking, and I like to park close to where I'm going. Young people, I understand, they can walk and they should. Older people not. Another issue is that the gym, I have nothing against the gym. They are allowed to do business same way that we all do business. However, they do have a parking lot behind, and they're not even telling their customers that they have a parking lot behind that they can use for their business. We have also employees from the gym that park in front of our businesses, 5, 6 employees, 6, 7 hours, then they finish working and they go 2 hours exercising. So they're there all day long. We have even pictures from a car that advertised the gym.
Let me interrupt you. Have you spoken with the management of the training zone about these issues?
No, we haven't. I haven't. I don't know someone else. I haven't.
You haven't?
What I have done, because Kelly suggested that.
That wouldn't be a bad idea though, would it?
Probably, and I will take it on up and going with him. Kelly was saying that some of the owners park in front of their businesses. I'm one of them, but it's only one parking lot versus 100 that the gym is taking. I've tried before parking around the corner, and the parking that I'm leaving behind, someone from the gym comes and takes it. So why should I go park 1 or 2 blocks away and leave a space for my customers when someone from the gym is gonna take my space?
Thank you, Martin. I want to move this
And
along here.
just one last thing. I also park in front of my business because people especially in bicycles and skateboards, they come and steal whatever I put outside my business. So I have to park in front, and I stay sitting in my car doing my business, advertising, whatever, in my car so I could be watching. Because my cameras, I have a surveillance system, but they're not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to council comments, questions, Mr. Shedd, you've had experience with this. We've had some conversations. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us before the council discusses?
Just some brief comments. First of all, I just got back from Long Island, which is in New York City area, and they have a parking problem. I walked probably half a mile to get to the restaurant I wanted to. And they have metered parking and you pay for that. The parking that we have here in and around E Street is very well used by training zone customers, but I think that is the market. And if the businesses were even more successful, we brought more businesses into the downtown area that really ramped up the visitors to our town. That would only make the problem worse if you're looking at it that way. But it really is a sign that our businesses are thriving. So I guess I see it in a little bit different perspective in that having limited parking spaces is a good indicator of a healthy downtown area. So that's now reserving parking spots for businesses. From a practical standpoint, I talked with our chief about that, our police chief, and I can see that we would be trying to solve a problem by creating a new problem. I would hesitate to believe that if we designated parking spots for each business, that people wouldn't park in each other's parking spots, and then that would force our police officers and our code enforcement folks to ticket them. I just don't see that creating a solution. I see it creating a larger problem with enforcement. As an example, I could come downtown and there's 2 spots in front of a business's store, I go in, look around the store, come back out, and I go to the training zone and do my exercise. Would I be ticketed for that? So I don't see that having designated parking spots for each business in front of their businesses as a solution. I think it would create more problems. I think there might be some other solutions out there, but I'll wait to hear from the rest of the council on that.
Let's move this around to members of the council who have an interest in commenting. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. Oh, Councilman Belza, please.
Yeah, and I'll make some comments to it. And I tend to agree with City Manager Shad. You know, I'm thinking about, we're talking about the idea of having designated spaces in front of a business for that business. And I'm thinking about the situation a year ago where there was a business on D Street that was focused around kids and youth, and parents would drop kids off. It was a school educational type thing. And there was 2 parking spaces designated for that business for parents to drop their children off and then leave. It was a quick drop off, in and out, right? That caused an extreme amount of turmoil on that section of D Street. And I even recall situations where people from the public would park in those designated spots and the business would complain. And there was even some confrontational situations that happened because of that, because people were parking in those spots, using it, and going to other businesses nearby to use that. So, I mean, that's an issue that's going to happen, and I see that causing more problems and more phone calls and complaints to the police department because somebody's parking in a designated parking spot that shouldn't be parking there, and then it's there, and then, you know, I don't know if it brings a conflict because it's technically a public right-of-way. That, I mean, this is not a shopping center complex. This is Main Street America. These roads and streets and places to hitch your horse, so to speak, was designed in the 1800s, right? And this is the environment, and a lot of people like to come into that environment and shop. Obviously, because we have a parking issue, that's apparent, right? Because they appreciate that downtown environment feel. I had lunch at Casa Carlos this afternoon, and I parked in front of Maria's Mexican restaurant a block away and had to cross the street and had to walk to Casa Carlos because there was no parking in front of Casa Carlos. And that's just the facts of life in a downtown community, in a downtown area. I spend a lot of time downtown. I go to a lot of different businesses. I don't work out, so I don't go to the gym, and I'm not favoring a training zone here. But I can find a parking spot within a half a block of whatever business that I'm going to. If it means parking down 3rd Street or parking over by the Pizza Guys section of D Street, or if it means parking down 4th Street on the sides in front of where Kelly's building is, I can get to wherever I need to within 600 to 700 feet of that storefront. And I don't know what the real solution here is. I understand the issue. I understand the complaint. But I don't know if there's really anything that we can do as a city other than build a parking garage, which is going to take a heck of a lot of cannabis revenue in order to complete that. It's going to continue. This is a good thing that we have this many people in downtown. And I would say this in regards to the gym. The space that is behind their building is, to my understanding, that they don't have the rights to park there. So that's not a designated area for the gym, although people do use it. And then the other thing I would say is that even though somebody comes out and uses the gym to work out, and it doesn't appear that that person goes and shops in a store, when it comes time for the holidays or for a birthday, family member birthday or whatever it is, that those people are in downtown and they're going to go to the candy box to get candy during the holiday time. They're going to go shopping for their mom's birthday down there because that's where they're frequenting all the time. And that's just standard retail concept.
Where people go in their pattern is where they're going to continue to shop. So even though they're not shopping every time they work out at the gym, they will come back down to downtown Marysville and buy products from other merchants. So there's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Buckavola.
Couple comments, couple thoughts, because I don't have the answers either. But, and I don't by any means want to sound like I'm defending the gym, because I think they do abuse the parking down there somewhat. But I think we forget when the gym moved in there, there was nobody downtown. I mean, we were glad to see them show up down there. So I think it's got to be a way of looking at a solution that we work with them to do something. You know, that this designated spots, here's the problem I see. So if we park in front of Eduardo's spot and go in, and then we want to walk over to the candy box, do we have to pull out and go over there? And then we want to come down somewhere else, do we have to, you know what I mean? I think that concept is not a very strong one. So, and then there's, you know, obviously the 2 hour, we've talked many times about doing a 1 hour, 2 hour. Well, I can tell you, if you're a woman and you go into a hair salon, you're not going to be out in an hour, and you probably aren't going to be out in 2 hours. So there's an issue there. So we got to, I mean, there's so many things that we got to look at here. I had to chuckle just a little bit about having to walk 2 blocks to the gym, because you're going to the gym to work out. So I didn't know that the 2 blocks walking to the gym was difficult, although I understand it had something to do with the children too. So, you know, it's, I think Councilman Belza hit it, that some of this is just the life of having this type of a downtown. Many of you probably do, and the mayor probably does. You know, we used to have the Marysville Hotel, we used to have Eddie's, and we used to have the State Theater. Packed downtown, and we always found a place to park, and we always walked a couple blocks to get there. It was part of the lifestyle. And so I think now people they only want to pull up right in front of the business and walk in and walk out. And I just don't know that I see that's ever going to happen. Lastly, I kind of think, you know, it's bad business practice to park in front of your own business and take up spaces. And I don't know how we do anything about that. I remember when Sullivan's Saddlery, a number of years ago, this came up, complaints about not parking, and they all the employees parked in front of the business. So, I mean, that's just a bad business practice. So again, I don't know that I have any solution. We are going to have a traffic and parking study within the general plan, correct?
Yes, but I don't know if it'll get into that level of detail.
Okay. I definitely think it's something we need to try to address, but I don't see a huge way to resolve this just off the top of our head.
Any other council comments or questions?
So quickly, I mean, I understand it's parking's been a thing here for quite some time. We've had overly diligent, hyper-focused enforcement over the past couple decades, and that was problematic in other matters, but it was efficient as well. I do most of my retail shopping on D Street, whether it's Copy City, shoe repair, glasses. You know, I even go to the frame shop and get pictures fixed for my business and things of that sort. I don't do much furniture shopping because I build most of my own furniture, but I get it. It's kind of a problem. I mean, when I go down there, I automatically look for something that's a little bit closer, but I have been known to walk a block or two, and it's really, you know, not that difficult for me. I understand that certain businesses have issues with carrying heavy furniture out and putting it in their vehicle. I don't have an answer whether there's a loading zone or an unloading zone, or we come up with ideas about being able to have loading zones in the back alleys of said businesses. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know that my business, I agree with Councilman Buttacavoli that I do not allow my employees to park in front because, quite frankly, I don't have any parking spots in front of my business. And I constantly fight with a state agency to take up most of my spots and so forth. Thankfully, they're cool with my weekend crowd parking in their parking lot at this point, but it's a factor. Parking's a thing. I mean, I don't own any parking spots for my business, and it's by the grace of God, still working. Is it difficult? Yeah. I make my employees walk a block. Do they like it? No. Do I like it? Not really. When I'm carrying all my tools between my truck and the backyard and all that stuff, but I make them do it. I got to do it. I don't know how to fix this for you guys, and I'm sorry that it is a thing. I mean, I agree with Ms. Rich Creek did bring up a point. I mean, whether you know it or not, I grew up driving in Los Angeles, where I grew up, and parking there was horrendous. Anywhere you wanted to go down there, it's just, you never really found a parking spot. And in LA, they drive around the corner to the 7-Eleven. Heck, we still do that in Marysville. Okay, it's kind of one of those things. It's walking is kind of a thing that's gone by the wayside, and I wish we had an answer. I do think that we need more parking spaces in Marysville, whether we make more parking lots or work on agreements or take city-owned property. And I brought this up a couple years ago to make more parking lot on 3rd and D, where the city owns that landlocked building, but Chief Sachs is trying to sell some property for us so we can do things. So yeah, I mean, there's ideas like that, but there's still no fix. And I feel for you guys. I do. It stinks. That's all I got. I know they got more comments on this, Mayor.
You have anything to say, Councilman Gilchrist? No. Thank you. I do. Allow me.
Just a quick comment. There is
Yeah, don't engage on this. Allow me to speak, please.
Oh, of course.
No, I'll give you a chance to speak later. Hang on.
Yes.
Hang on.
Wait.
I asked earlier, have you talked to training zone management about this?
No.
And you haven't. Well, that's where you start, because if you come in here and city people go over there, that changes the dynamic of the conversation. It's here, if you go to him, you're peer to peer, and you're much more likely to have a sympathetic ear than if Jim or someone with a badge and a gun shows up to talk about it, right? And I think that's a good place to start. Second place to start, and particularly in a conversation like that, you should ask them how many employees they have on at any time, and ask them all to park at least a block and a half away. For crying out loud, they work at a gym, they're in shape, they can walk a block and a half. Now, that may not be the case of their clients, their members or whatever. That if I've got the floor. We're not having a conversation here. I've got the floor. Okay, and so the thing is, have that conversation, and I think a group of you, and get together with the owner. He or she are business people too. They'll be sympathetic. They'll understand. They're going to understand having you around is a plus for them. And that's a great place to start. And city pressure on them further to this conversation, I don't think would be terribly productive, number one. Number two, Mr. Shad, I wanted to ask you a question. For example, if you go to, for example, the Target store or one of these big stores in Raleigh's, and they do this, they reserve a couple spots up close for people loading and unloading, if you will. You know, short-term parking for someone picking something up. Is there, I think there's what, 14 parking spaces per side of the street or something like that? Do we know the number? It's a number, it's in the teens, right? We know that. Could we identify a spot, maybe more than one, in the middle of the block with a sign for loading and unloading only, 15 minutes strictly enforced? And if you see someone in there longer than 15 minutes, get someone, there's volunteers who are usually working during the daytime, they'll come by and they'll write a ticket and flag them. And again, this thing of, you have to talk to the business owners. If you're going to ask the management of training zone not to have the owners or employees park close by, then you shouldn't park close by either. And see, that's a step. It's a step in the right direction. and see if that bears any fruit. See if people comply. On parking also, this brings to mind the crush of parking. I understand that when Caltrans expanded their building, they didn't expand the parking to accommodate it. And that neighborhood near the Caltrans is swarmed with Caltrans employees parking. And it's a negative on that neighborhood, and it can cause problems in that neighborhood. Something to keep in mind would be the possibility of supplying stickers. You know, you can only park in front here with a resident sticker or something like that, or if you're a guest or what have you, because that is clearly abused, and Caltrans has taken advantage of that neighborhood in doing that. Eduardo, you've got our thoughts, and thank you. I need to cut this off. We've got a lot of business to take care of. Take those thoughts forward. You heard a lot of thoughts from people who care about you and care about downtown and care about business in Marysville. I have one more idea on the training zone. Training zone, this is off the topic a little bit. Training zone pays property taxes like any good business. They don't sell much retail stuff. So it's property tax, that's it. I would like to explore the potential for a monthly city tax on memberships. In other words, each membership pays an additional, they just have to raise their rates by whatever we decide we can charge them. There's got to be hundreds and hundreds of members there, and get a, say there's 500 members and it's $10 a month extra for a city tax. That's 5,000, that's 60,000 a year, and that's a real number. But this parking thing, do it peer to peer. Go talk to those folks, tell them you've been here, that's been our suggestion, and see what happens and report back. Please? Thank you very much.
You all have a point. I understand it. My only suggestion was, there was a 2-hour meeting. We can have some sections where it's 4-hour parking for some of those.
Yeah, there's lots to talk about, but I think first steps are the ones that have been suggested here. Go peer to peer with the managers and owners of the training zone, and everybody agree, and see if that makes a difference. And I'm going to ask the city manager to look into the possibility of designating at least one spot per side of the street as a loading and unloading zone, strictly enforced, 15 minutes maximum. I know that doesn't answer all the concerns y'all have, but I think it's a step in the right direction, and there's a success model for that with very large retailers who are accommodating people who are going to be in and out, and they want to take care of things. And let's see if that makes a difference. We're on your side. Thank you. Whew. Okay, moving to item number 11. Dispatch analysis discussion. This was requested by our colleague, Councilman Brad Hudson. How do we want to proceed on this? Brad, are you going to kick it off, or city manager? How are we going to do this?
Right. So thank you. So I brought this up because I wanted to have a conversation basically on increasing the budget that we had agreed of $10,000 some time ago. That was the whole reason of bringing it up last Wednesday when I had a conversation with Jim, was just to increase it from 10,000, like you had said in the beginning. And after we discovered a little bit of the scope of this project was going to be a little bit bigger, that it was going to be about $30,000. After reading this, I find myself a little on the perturbed side in the fact that you said you'd be building a scope of the project to be able to handle it to an outside evaluator. And for other conversations we had, it needed to be done by an outside evaluator, but it appears you have done an analysis yourself here. And that's what I find kind of interesting at this particular moment. So with the approach to create your own analysis, we had mentioned might be looked at as slightly varied instead of having outside. Here we are looking at your analysis. I mean, the intent of putting your analysis out was for what? All I wanted to do was get an outside opinion and take the word of the outside opinion. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever they decided, just come and say, I get it. I mean, not wanting to belabor the point here too much. You know, the department heads have programs and they're trying to keep their programs, and Chief Sachs is a good leader and trying to keep his program. And that's great. But we do have other issues on a bigger scope here. And we talked about for potential future consolidation with potential aspects of either side of the city, if we ever got that far with, you know, collaborative dispatch and so forth. This was just a step in that direction. In my platform to run for council 3 years ago, it was simply put, bigger business, not bigger taxes, and fiduciary responsibility for our tax dollars that are here. So originally, when I brought this up 3 years ago, I got kind of snowballed a little bit when I came up with the idea. I just wanted to see if we can get an analysis for best use of our tax dollars. That's what I want to see here, is that it has been alluded that here in the near future, we're going to have a discussion about a $1.2 million infrastructure upgrade. As of like last week, I heard it was $800,000, but now it's 1.2 of potential tax dollars out of our general fund. And if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. But if it's mandated upgrades, and we have another dispatch center that's also using some of our same tax dollars to do the same sort of thing on that side, why can't we just have an outside analysis that would make the decree that this council can have a decision on when whatever that decision be, go forth? I just wanted to have a conversation to increase from our already agreed 10,000 to 30,000 like suggested. That was the whole point to bring this up for discussion. I relinquish the floor.
Okay. So I did intend to move forward with an outside evaluation. And as I said in my memo, that estimated cost was higher than I expected, and I take full responsibility for that. In my moving forward to try and collect information for a scope of work, there was information shared with me by the Sheriff's Department and by others that indicated that this may not be a venture that reduces cost, at least by moving our dispatch calls to the sheriff. And that was just information that was provided to me in my process of preparing to develop that scope of work. And understand, I can't just go develop a scope of work in vacuum. I have to ask the sheriff that they will cooperate in that analysis, because if they don't cooperate, we can't perform the analysis. I can't perform an analysis. The consultant can't perform analysis. As I went through that, their formula was fairly simple. Their formula is basically number of calls times their rate. And they develop their rate based on the number of staff they have and the cost associated with that staff. Then they allocate it across the agencies that they're serving. So not a complex analysis, but when I did that analysis, it showed that basically the sheriff was not going to save us money by going to their dispatch center. I also took into account, and this was a concern that council brought up as well, the investment of $1.2 million in radio equipment or digital encryption equipment. And $1.2 million was always the figure I heard. I never heard 800,000. So I had been working on this. I was asked to put this on the agenda. I did. And now what we're looking at is making a decision whether we invest $30,000 in an outside consultant or not. And it's the council's will to do that, but I feel that council is entitled and should get the information I've collected to date to make the best decision on that as possible. right now, and I've talked to the sheriff about this. I don't think he's in disagreement with my analysis, but you know, if we can't come close to matching our cost to do something internally, which was the original discussion, versus having somebody outside do it, the sheriff, which is always the one that was discussed, then I'm cautious about moving forward with spending $33,000 for that analysis. Now, what the outside consultant will do likely is be able to tell us all of the technical information and the challenges of integrating those systems. But if the cost isn't favorable, I don't know if they can help us with that. I mean, they would have to overcome through integration a significant cost savings. And I'll be honest with you, when I talked to the sheriff, they indicated that those prices may change, but I didn't get the impression that they were going to change, meaning they were going to go down in price per call. They indicated they may go up in price as well. So apologize if I provided more information than was expected, but I didn't want to have that discussion in this meeting without providing that information to you ahead of time. I would have preferred to have the meeting on the 2nd of next month so that we could have some further discussions on it, but that's where we're at now. Right now, the financial analysis at a rudimentary level indicates that it would not create a savings to send fire dispatch over to the sheriff's office or the entire 37,000 calls over to the sheriff for their services. That's where we're at.
Okay, it's been presented. Do we have public comment on this matter? Madam Clerk?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Then comment from members of the council.
I was also under the same, assuming that we were coming here to decide if we were going to put another 20 into this to look at it. I still think that's the right thing to do. And before if we take what you presented, Jim, and I appreciate the time you had to put into this, but this doesn't give us a good comparison. And I'll just briefly say, so at 37,000 calls in 1580, I mean, that's 586,000 a year, right? Okay. That's, I don't know what our budget right now is, but it's got to be pretty darn close to that. Okay, so it would cost us the same, basically, roughly, because I'm just taking our calls by the 1580 that you presented.
It would cost us the same as our budget with, it would cost us the same if we were to transfer and basically remove every piece of that budget that was available. So, and maybe to clarify, it's a dispatch budget by name, but it also includes record keeping and one full-time record keeper. That is about a $50,000 hit. So then you say, okay, well, we got 515, you take that 50 out, now we're at roughly 465 or 450 to 460.
Why would you take that out? We have to have it anyway, right? So it is part of that budget.
So the county would charge us 500 and some odd thousand.
Roughly 586.
And we would keep that record person on staff. Yeah, so.
Well, just going by what you're saying there, we're not that far off, just roughly, okay? And what we don't see here is we've got the cost of effort will be approximately 1.24 million, including upgrades to dispatch center, radio towers, vehicle units, handheld units, associated software. We wouldn't be putting all that in place if we were to move, right? Now,
We would be putting 900,000.
okay, but let me go there. This says cost of these items is estimated, excuse me, of those costs, the vehicle unit, handheld, and towers will require upgrades regardless, it says. So we're, according to what you've got here, we're gonna have to spend the 941,000 either way, correct?
We are going to have to spend, if we keep it internally, 1.2.
Right.
And if we farm it out to the county, we're going to have to spend 900,000.
Right, okay. That's my point. So we're about $250,000 less on improvements, which is a little hard to identify here because it doesn't break them down, but I'll go with your numbers there. So it's just hard to follow where the savings and where it's not. I mean, because what I'm seeing is it's going to cost us less money to get into with Yuba County. It's already, so that number's regardless. That's regardless if we go there or don't go there, we have certain costs. And that's the 941,000, correct?
So we're going to spend, just a nice round figure,
yeah,
$300,000 less if we go to the county.
Right.
On the capital upgrade.
Okay, so we're going to spend 300,000 less, and our cost is going to be roughly the same.
It's going to be about 50 to 60,000 higher.
50 or 60,000 based on the number of calls that we're using right now.
Yes.
Okay.
And
on that number,
that is with just one full-time dispatcher remaining here, which probably will not, or excuse me, full-time record keeper here.
It does include that, or it does not.
That would just be, it'd be $50,000 with just the one person staying behind. That's not going to be adequate.
That's not going to be what?
Adequate to run the records side of things.
Because that's part of the full, it's a portion of full-time.
Well,
I'm more than happy to explain this in great detail, how I came up with the math.
I don't think we need great detail. I think we need more specific.
My math.
So we can take that. Now, one last question I want to ask. So we had an issue with the number of calls. Is this after the adjusted calls, or is this before the adjusted calls with the issue that we had with the fire department?
I'm not following you. I think we're talking two different things here.
No, I've moved on to something here. So we're talking about 37,000 calls a year, okay? At one time when we were looking at them, we had a certain area was being doubled up accidentally.
Those were
concurrent
overlapping calls, and that really is a separate issue from total number of calls. Our total number of calls have always been correct.
So it is 37,000.
37,000.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I think I haven't made a decision either way, but this isn't quite enough for me to understand how we're spending that money.
And honestly, I don't want to, I want to do it right, but it's $30,000. And I'm more than happy to spend all the time we need to understand where we're at now from a savings standpoint. We can continue this to another meeting if we choose to do so, and I will work with all the council members to explain those numbers.
I just want to say this, and I'll stop. Jim, you've made the comment that you think the $30,000 is a little bit wasted. I'm taking it as that, correct?
If my math is correct, Yes.
Okay. That being said, the $300,000 savings for the equipment doesn't seem to fall into a positive with you.
Well,
The 30,000 spending falls into a negative, but this doesn't seem to be.
well, and I may not have explained things very well, but both the Motorola rep and the sheriff staff indicated that yes, there might be some savings in equipment, or that $300,000, but that could get easily chewed up in the integration cost that would be required to integrate our systems with their systems. So,
Okay, so just to be clear here, you're saying the 941 isn't really a good solid number, but you're saying the 1.24 million is a good solid number. Is that
well,
correct?
what I'm saying is the 1.24 is a solid number. The 900 and some, I think the supplier could give us a little more information on that. But the separate issue is if we go to the sheriff, we've got to get our systems talking together, separate of this digital encryption. And there will likely be a cost to that as well. And that was based on our conversation with the sheriff and the consultant that I talked to briefly over the phone. So,
okay,
it could, and these are very crude assumptions, but the indication it could be a wash by the time we get everything integrated.
If I may, I've not studied this as carefully as I wish I had, although I have spent a great deal of time with our city manager on this. And with respect to the $300,000 CapEx that's avoided, I understand if you go with the county, then we don't have to buy the base station equipment. We just have to populate the nodes in the system, the vehicles. But right now, you said it's a 50,000 of the current expense is also record keeping, right?
Well,
but that's not a full. But that a full-time record keeper, the total cost is 50K.
Roughly. Well, let me turn it back on again. So there's the full-time record keeper that is very quantifiable, that is record keeping and not dispatch. But our dispatchers, while they're dispatching, they're also performing other duties. They're performing concurrent duties. When things are slow, they do record keeping, they do other stuff.
Then I think what as you move forward in this analysis, and I think that's where we're going with this, is a finer analysis of it. It would be what component of the dispatch expense would not go away as a requirement. In other words, the dispatch, that would go away. But if they're doing other duties that need to be done, is that a full-time equivalent that equals 100,000? In which case there's a 3-year payback on the delta. Let me finish. Yeah, and so I'm just sharing how I'm thinking about it. Whenever you're going to change something, I think there needs to be a clear case financially and operationally. And the financial piece is not clear to me. I know operationally there's some concerns. I've chatted with the chief of police and with our fire chief, both very capable and representing their obligations to the city very well. My suggestion would be, and perhaps Vice Mayor, you agree with this, that we continue with management doing an analysis of this and really fine-tuning that analysis before considering whether or not we spend money on a consultant. That's my personal opinion. Looks like we're gonna get a. Oh, did you want to go ahead, Jim?
I just want real quick. My thought is, and I understand the potential for bias concern, but I think, I don't know if there needs to be further analysis, because that really defeats the purpose that Councilmember Hudson is talking about. I think what needs to perhaps happen is further explanation of my numbers before that decision is made to spend $30,000. I mean, I can do more analysis, but that's just digging that hole deeper that you're concerned about.
Not necessarily.
No, I like the additional analysis. It's what components, what expenses would we not be losing? And the case, I mean, the suggestion, in fact, the assertion is that we would not be losing the entire dispatch budget, because the dispatch function accomplishes many other things.
Yeah,
and so that needs to be quantified in terms of a full-time equivalence or percentages thereof, and that cost, because then we know, at least on a financial, approaching it financially, where we're going. So that's kind of where I'm focused right now.
And I hate to be a pest, but
you're not.
In the tables, we attempted to account for that. The calculations I did, I accounted for best estimate of what those additional FTEs that would have to stay behind are. So the mathematical analysis included additional costs or costs that would not be shed by moving to the county. And it also included, because we intended to lease equipment for the digital encryption, or finance it, I should say, it included that in the annual cost as well.
And do we have an understanding, the county doesn't have to take this if we want to move it? Is that correct?
Correct.
They do not have to take this, number one. Number two, here and there, I've heard rumblings that perhaps the county dispatch is not as, I don't want to criticize it, but we need to look at the stability of that organization and its performance, because it's not, I don't think we just assume that, well, this is going to be wonderful and as good or better. And that clearly needs to be part of the equation. Change has risk. And before any change is made, every risk needs to be nailed down, because right now, as imperfect as it might be, we have something that works and people are used to. And there might be some workarounds involved here and there, but and I'm open to a change. Change has risk. I've been through a lot of changes in a lot of different organizations, and there's always unhappy surprises.
One more comment, Mr. Smith.
Please.
I'm fine with taking the time to look at a little better explanation before we move forward with the extra money. But I'll tell you the kind of things that, one more thing that throws me totally on this whole thing was when you go to the analysis, you've got contract with sheriff at $710 per call at 37,000 calls, and retaining the 2 dispatchers for record keeping. 710 at 37 is only 263,000. So you see where there's a lot of confusion?
Well, yeah, and I can see the confusion there, but that was 710, that number I plugged in there until I got a break even with our internal cost. And so the point there was that the sheriff's department would have to lower their rate per call to 710 to make them competitive with us.
I'm going to have to see it better, because that's only $263,000 to make them competitive with us. So, and you said our budget was $530,000. So I'm lost. But probably not a time to go through right now. But I am willing to take another look or explanation before we go ahead and approve the extra 20 grand.
Before we approve any of it. Councilman Belzer, you had something to say.
Thank you. Since you guys have dominated the conversation, I'll try to get a couple words in edgewise on this. You know, we're fixated and we're focused on the fiscal component of this. And Mr. Mayor, you alluded to this a little bit in your last comment. One of my key concerns here is our service to our citizens. How fast and the quality of service that we're giving from our emergency services to our citizens. How fast are we responding? How fast are the calls coming through? How fast are those things happening? And, you know, I've had a number of different comments made to me, excuse me, over the past year and a half from individuals, some individuals that aren't even with the city anymore, that there is complications in our communication systems depending on where the calls are in our service areas, referencing District 10 or Hallwood or, you know, and some of those different components. And when we have some services that have to leave our area and how long it takes for other services to come in to service our area, like Linda Fire, et cetera, these are real issues. And these are real things that are happening that are putting the time frame in which we respond to an emergency at risk. And when somebody's life is on the line, 30 seconds makes all the difference in the world. And there's no dollar amount that you can put on that, whether it's a $10,000 analysis or a $30,000 analysis. And it's something that we seriously need to take into consideration, not just the dollar amounts on this, but the quality of service that we're giving to our citizens who we represent. And that's what we're here to do. And that's what we're here for. We reference Measure C. Measure C is put in place to improve our emergency services. That was one of the key components to that. I don't have any problem spending a little extra money to make a determination as to whether we internally are providing the best service to our citizens or whether there's an alternative avenue to provide the best service to our citizens. And one life is worth that to me. So I want to move forward and I want a non-bias analysis. Now, that can ruffle some feathers and it can, you know, get some people irritated. But when we're talking about maintaining something or letting go of something, it's extremely important to have a clear, non-biased set of eyes on it as to whether we can provide that best service for our citizens or whether the county can provide that best service for our citizens, regardless of the dollar amount. So I'm in favor of continuing down the path that we continued down, which is a non-bias evaluation economically, but also service caliber as well. And I understand that there's different dispatch trainings for different people that are in different places. There's specific fire dispatch training versus specific police dispatch training, and some dispatch overlaps. I can't get into the weeds on that because I really don't know enough about it, which is why there's more reason to get a full analysis of the entire big picture, not just whether it's going to cost a little bit extra money here or a little bit extra money there. So there, now you have my 2 words on edge.
Oh, please, go ahead.
I'll try and keep it short. And I respect your opinion. I am fine if we choose, if council's will is to spend the $30,000, it's your will. But I want to come back to what you had just mentioned about the big picture and about serving our citizens. Dispatch is a component of serving our citizens and making sure we get the calls answered on time. But the big picture is, do we get there on time or as quickly as possible? And dispatch is a very small portion of whether we get there on time or not. And what I have seen here is we have not discussed a lot about what is our turnaround time, how quick, or what is our response time, how quickly are we getting there, how much of that component is dispatch, how much of it is other things, and are there other solutions that would allow us to reduce our time to get to calls. So if we're going to look at the big picture, we should look at the entire thing.
Like an analysis.
Well, the analysis of turnaround time will not be it within the scope that we're talking about, because we're talking about dispatch. So if we're going to be, I fully agree that our goal here is to provide the citizens service, and in this case, it's turnaround time. But there's, or response time. There's a lot to response time. And should we be looking at everything else that goes into that calculation of response time? In fact, most agencies measure and report on response time on a regular basis. And perhaps that's where we need to look holistically at how quickly we're responding, and then what are the solutions to increase or reduce that response time.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I can tell you that the destination of that conversation from both departments is going to be more staff, more firemen, more police officers, and quicker response time. That's been an open conversation for a long time from both departments, and we'll get quicker response times when we get more people. What I'm talking about is the response time that it takes when you have fire engine leave the city limits, and how fast it takes for the communication to happen between our dispatch to another area to come in and cover us. That is a real issue that I saw happen, okay? So that's a real thing that happens. And it's not just response time about fire, it's also response time and communication in regards to police. And in fact, even in our last council meeting, there's times where, and some people make comments to this about that there's hours before there's a point of contact made. And I don't want to dig into that. That's not, we don't need to get into those weeds, right? What we're talking about here is just the simple necessity. And I think there's been enough argument displayed here to say this needs further evaluation beyond what just the numbers say, but what the actual service to our community is. So,
and
thank you.
I would hope we come out with not just quantifiable financial numbers, but quantifiable expected improvements in service.
Absolutely. We want to increase our excellence. We want to have an excellent response. I agree with you 100%.
Well, to the extent Hallwood District 10 complicate this, maybe we don't do a deal with Hallwood and District 10 anymore. It costs manpower, time. It complicates responses within the city, and we do get paid for it. But again, it takes money, it takes time, it takes people, and maybe we don't do that. That isn't until we annex those areas like I want to. But that's years away. That would solve that problem immediately. Anyway, where do we leave this? Are we going to? Mr. City Manager, where do you suggest we go from here based on what you're hearing from the council? And then we'll see if we get nods from the council on that, whatever approach you suggest.
So it is the will of the council, and the will, or I'll defer to our attorney on the technicals of this in a second, but it seems like there are two options that I can think of. One is further analysis and explanation to the council members so that they understand my numbers, or the other is direction to move forward with an independent analysis at the cost of $30,000. But I think we would have to bring that to council as an action item, right?
I was at a disadvantage here. The item number 11, there's nothing in my agenda book, and I just figured there wasn't. So is this something that was sent out via email?
Yes.
Well, I didn't pick it up. And so it's not in my book. I didn't read it, so and I'm not going to read it right now. And I'm not trying to delay anything. I know we'd had the conversation. And I know there's keen interest on the council, and I don't want to get in the way of that keen interest. It's present something more specific at a future council meeting.
Through the chair, it sounds as though we have two options, either to table this and get a better explanation from our city manager as to why he thinks his numbers are appropriate, and they may or may not. I think there's just a bigger analysis that needs to be done here, not only the math, just as in the options of, it doesn't necessarily have to be county. There can be other options that can be presented to us by an outside analysis that can be done. You know, I mean, there are other communities that have dealt with the same situation that, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to kind of let them come to us with their analysis expertise-wise, and there are companies fitted to do just that. You know, that's kind of what we talked about, and that's what you said could be done for $10,000. And then you came back at a later date, not on council, not on the dais, and said it was going to cost $30,000. So that was the point for bringing it up for discussion, was to advances for further analysis by an outside agency that give us the big full spectrum of the entire project, not just numbers.
Well, I will tell you that the analysis was always the sheriff. So if we're now talking about looking at other alternatives, we can do that, but now I will have to go back to the consultant and see what that would cost.
Sure. What I have not heard here, and I've been in other conversations when I've heard arguments regarding dispatch both sides, but what I've not heard here is reasons why we should change. Hard reasons why we should change. What are the compelling reasons? What is the major motivation? What is it that's causing an uprising in the populace about this? I don't sense any of that. And so absent that, I think that needs to be presented. In other words, major premise, we got a real problem here. It's X, Y, and Z. Minor premise, we need to do something about it. Conclusion, we're going to do this. And I'm not criticizing anybody who's on one side or the other of this. And I think that should be, when we're talking about spending even 30K on something, I think there should be a weightier syllogistic argument. Major premise, minor premise, conclusion. And it should be simple, and it should be clear to the citizens that we're spending money wisely on pursuing this consideration. And again, I've been on both sides. I've listened to both sides of this. I do not have a dog in the fight, and I just want what's best for the city, as Councilman Belza suggests. What's best?
And possibly we need to hear from internally what our chiefs have to say. They're the ones that have to deal with it on a regular basis.
There you go. So can we leave it to the city manager to sharpen whatever information or conclusions he's reached, perhaps bring in the, as you suggest, Councilman Belza, bring in the key participants here, represents the fire and police, and public comment. And again, I'll leave it there. I don't want to talk too long.
So through the chair, it's the council's will at this particular point to do what?
table to future meeting and again, present why are we considering this? That mean, in a hard argument, why should we consider a change? And or spend the money on looking at a change? And what is the motivation? What is the hard motivation for that?
So,
and there may be an overwhelming argument in favor of it.
And there may be an argument in the opposite side, Mayor, and that's why I'm looking for the outside analysis to come in and give that. That's where I still think we need to go.
Well, I would think, with all respect, Councilman Hudson, I mean that. I haven't heard it. And if it's not there, then the next step is more iffy for me than otherwise. That's just me personally. I'm just one voice.
So in response, Mayor, you haven't heard it on this dais, or you haven't heard it at all? Because we haven't heard it on this dais.
Well, no, I've heard in not casual conversation, but I've heard in conversation with participants in the system about problems. But nothing made me rise up in arms and come to a city manager or other members saying, boy, we need to do something about this. And that's not a knock on, and I know the fire department has a dog in the fight, and the police department has a dog in the fight. And there are 2 points of view. And frankly, I think maybe we ought to have those 2 points of view presented. And both financially and in terms of need and quality of service. That might be a good way to go. And I don't want to pit these fine gentlemen against each other.
I think that's what's going to happen, though, because
well, of course it is. Of course it is, Brett. I think it has to happen. And they are department heads, and this is the CEO, and the CEO should be deeply involved in that. And his input on the quality of the argument should be taken seriously as well as our own considerations on this.
With respect, I still think that we need an outside analysis to come in to do a fair and unbiased disposition, looking at the numbers, looking at potential options, looking at all scenarios, and helping us understand we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, but something can be done. We are all, I would think, fairly aware of potential discrepancies between particular departments. There is something that can be analyzed here, and I don't necessarily think we need to waste any more staff time on trying to figure this out. I mean, with respect, Jim, that's why I had the conversation with you going, you've got 3 department heads in your lap right now. And so you're taking care of all these positions, but you spend a lot of time on this, which may or may not be inaccurate, but it's still something that can be done by somebody else so we can focus on hiring and kind of go from there on those other new positions.
Let's move this forward right now. Mr. City Manager, do you have a department head here who has a strong opinion on this? And I presume there's 2. And should we have that conversation right here and now?
I would say we do have 2 department heads that have a strong opinion on it, and they've had a strong opinion on it for much longer than I've been here. And so I do tend to agree with Councilmember Hudson that we could have them both up here presenting their argument, which will probably be similar argument to the arguments that have been presented in the past. So, you know,
but those arguments have not been shared publicly, I don't think. Not that I'm aware of. They have not been put on the official record.
There's a need for that? Okay.
No, if we're going to move forward, I mean, this is a legitimate difference of opinion. And I respect that, and I've heard both sides, and that's why I've been deferring to our city manager on this. And he's got a financial conclusion that makes sense to me, but we could be missing something. Again, is there a big service problem? And I think we need to hear from department heads, and whether we do that tonight or another night, I think that might be a good starting point. Good, healthy, friendly, collegial debate on this topic before we move forward. And I think that will get the compelling reasons for and against on the record.
To the chair.
And we can judge from that. That seems fair to me.
Well, to the chair, I firmly disregard that we need to put our department heads on public display for argumentation for their own two standpoints. As leaders of the city, we just need to make decisions that are either fiduciary responsible and or for betterment of our constituents, not necessarily do a Maury Povich show right here of what may or may not happen. I think an analysis from an outside individual would probably be the best, and we can make our decision based upon that. Again, I'm not faulting the fact that maybe Jim's numbers may be perfect, and they may be. You know, I mean, he's better at math than I am, and so are you, Mayor. But it's still one of those things. There's other factors here besides just independent dispositions of department heads. There is the fact that we've got a tax base that's paying for two particular dispatches in one county that's less than half a mile from one another. I mean, that's something that we can analyze here and say, well, how much is going to cost for their infrastructure upgrade, you know, some 500 feet that way, or how much is it going to cost for an infrastructure upgrade 500 feet that way? And now we're at maybe potentially $2 million. An outside analysis would be able to take that and all the other ancillary information and bring it in together for potential options that we could talk about, whether we stay with our current dispatch or we go to county or we go to an ERD, which is what Grass Valley did. I mean, in historical response, CAL FIRE was on contract with the city of Marysville for 18 years, and they left on a $150,000 discrepancy because they wanted to move dispatch up to Grass Valley ERD, which is top of the line dispatch for $40 a call. There are other options out there besides just here or the county or so forth, and that can be brought forth by an outside analysis that gives us all of the potential information to go from there. I would prefer to go that direction instead of having a Maury Povich situation go on right now. Or what was the other guy that got his nose broke?
Jerry Springer.
Thank you.
I too don't necessarily want to put our two chiefs in that situation.
Agreed.
But
isn't that where the argument is? Isn't that where the difference of opinion is?
Well, and I want good point. So now I'm getting a little worked up. It's not an opinion. It shouldn't be an opinion unless it's an expert opinion. You know, it should be based on factual information and data. And I'll be honest with you, what I've heard so far from both council members and our staff have been instances where there's an issue, but there's not been any data conglomerated that would create the argument that we're talking about. So, you know, if an analysis is going to be done, and I'm a stickler for this, there needs to be an analysis based on data and not opinion. And so if it takes an outside company to do that because you feel I'm biased, that's fine as well. I will say I do not have the expertise on dispatch centers, but the financial stuff I feel very comfortable with. So if we're looking at both issues, the financial analysis and the technical, what it would provide to the community, I can understand that. But the other thing that I would have to have clarified is, because when I first started on this, it was always the county sheriff, and that's what we were tasked with looking at. That's what I was going to hire the consultant for. When we start talking about all the other options, more money. I don't know if it's more money, but it's certainly a different scope on the project. So it might be, you know, another solution I'll throw out is perhaps we engage the consultant on a higher level and say, give us a preliminary analysis. What can you do that for?
If I may, I've heard these arguments on and off, and rather than create too much disharmony within the council on this topic, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just sharing what I'm thinking, as is everything. I'd rather spend the money than have a bunch of ill will not ill will, but back and forth on a topic that I know has been held dear by members, certain members of the council, and maybe everybody, and others within the city. And so let's do something, and let's get it out of the way, one way or the other.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm still speaking. Thank you.
Okay.
And so, if that's what it takes, let's do that, because 30,000 is a lot of money, but conflict without data that should be in the major premise, and minor premise with the evidence. I don't see that data, but people who are close and have been close to this feel strongly about it, and I respect that. And so if we need to do that to put this to bed, then let's do that. And I wish it could be done internally, but if we need to do that, let's do that, and let's find out what it takes. But again, once you open the scope to any potential solution under the sun, that might make the 30 look cheap, and I'm concerned about that.
Well, that's why I would suggest if we're going to do something like that, we could potentially do it in 2 phases and get a rough idea from a consultant at what our options are and pay them for that. And then if there was merit, we could move forward with more funding to do more.
Okay.
Of course, my last guess was bad on the 10,000 versus 30. So I'm going to need to talk to the consultant about what that might be. But I want to make clear that the scope now is to look at all.
So
not just the sheriff.
Is it fair to assess that there's a consensus that city manager will look into the independent analysis on this 2-step approach? First a big survey, and then, or whatever cost he comes up with, that we have something very specific that we can look at in terms of a independent consultant, and we go yay or nay. And if it's reasonable, I'd be inclined to say yay at that point. We've got a consensus on that?
Point first.
Please,
are you finished, Mr. Mayor? Okay, so you brought up, why do we want to do this? 2 reasons: cost and service to the community. That easy. Now, I have sat with both chiefs and talked to both of them. They both have very compelling reasons why we should and why we shouldn't. Very, very good reasons. I have not ridden around with the police department to know how well or how smoothly it works. I have with the fire department, and it was total confusion within that cab of trying to get, we had to go from different dispatches to different dispatches. Now, if we don't change services, we have to find a way to improve our service out of our dispatch. Because like I said, I sat in a fire truck when they were calling Cal Fire, they were calling Linda, and it had to keep coming back. It never crossed from one to the other. So I think whether that needs to be done through a consultant, I don't know, but cost and service, and the idea of, is there an option how to improve what we have, because we're still going to have these outrageous costs of 900 plus thousand and 1 million, no matter what. So whether we can solve our problems within that, I guess, is to be seen. I still lean towards the outside service, but I would be willing to take 2 weeks to get a better understanding from what you have put together. But this has got to come back and move forward with something.
So I think that supports the consensus that we table until the next meeting and hear the
Well, I want to clear.
One thing
clarify what's
about,
coming
one thing
back.
about listening to the chiefs, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to bring them up like tonight with them not prepared at all. At the same time, I don't want to get into a bickering match with us or them, which hopefully we're all adults,
No one's
but
suggesting that.
in public. So I think I would leave it up to city manager to decide what's the best way to communicate that stuff. But I am still leaning towards an outside decision, but I do think there could be some answers.
I just want to clarify what I'm coming back in 2 weeks with.
A better explanation of these numbers, what we're looking at. So, and I would sit down with you and discuss and tell you why I can't make them work in my head. And if that's not the case, then we got to go out.
Through the chair, if you're done first.
I am.
Councilman Hudson.
I still think, with respect to the numbers, which is just one part integral fact that needs to be displayed and or explained, can also be done through the outside consultant that we get going. I mean, if we postpone this for another 2 weeks for him to come back, Jim, to come back and say, hey, I found somebody that's going to do a two-stage approach, I think we could go from that point right now.
What I meant. So we're good. We have to bring it back as a scheduled on the agenda. Correct, Brent? We have to bring it back that way before we can make a decision.
Right now, you've listed discussion only.
Okay.
The staff report doesn't have a specific.
What I would like to see in those 2 weeks, not bring this back in 2 weeks on another discussion, but we can have those individual meetings between now and then we can make a decision in 2 weeks. It's either you've explained it and we're all happy, or you haven't, and we'll make that decision the next meeting.
So again,
I'm trying to put it off 2 weeks.
It's still going to have to come back before the meeting if we don't give him direction. I mean, the whole point of bringing it up for discussion was to talk about increasing from 10,000 to 30,000. And that was in the past. If the council had agreed to go with an increase, then we just give that nod of that's the direction we're to go. And then staff, Jim, has direction. I mean, if you want to bring this back.
We have to bring it back. It's a discussion item only tonight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have to bring it back anyway in 2 weeks. Let's get some discussion individually between now and then. And if we're not all happy, the direction is, well, it's on the agenda, we'll vote for it, because we can't do that tonight.
So to clarify, so I'm doing the right thing. And I don't know if we have a consensus here or I don't know what we have at this point, but if we bring it back in 2 weeks and I've explained it sufficiently to everyone, then they'll have the ability to provide me with direction and those or to spend more money okay. And that may be, and I'm trying to think ahead. I could provide recommendations or choices of you spend the $30,000, you spend less money, which may not be quantified, or we say this is sufficient. So, I'm going to have to bring back a recommendation. Am I correct, Brian?
Yep.
So I'll bring, after our explanation, I don't know if my recommendation would change, but it's going to be a recommendation. And then I can also put alternatives in there if you guys want to see alternatives to that recommendation. Is that fair?
Well, the one recommendation, it's.
Mics, please.
Beg your pardon?
Mics were not on.
It's clear that one of the recommendations needs to be hiring an independent outside consultant. Okay. So include that and whatever else you want to recommend. And I think, are we okay there? I'm not hearing any objection. Can we move on? I think.
I will make a commitment to reach out to each one of you so we can have a discussion. Try and explain my figures and get your input.
But you're still going to come back with recommendations?
Yeah, prior to the council.
Exactly, and one of which will be independent, and it can be stages or whatever. However you think it should be presented, and we can move from there. Are we okay?
Yes.
We're moving on to the next item. Yes, sir. Oh, yes, let's take a 5-minute.
I got a feeling this is going to be a long one.
Actually, it's going to be short. I think we need some more information before we really address this. But no, go ahead. Let's take a 3-minute break, 4-minute break, whatever it takes.
All aboard!
We can show you how. Live streaming can be simple and not expensive. You may already have the basic tools right in your hand. But it's more than just pushing live to communicate effectively. That's where Yuba-Sutter.live and Live Streaming YS on Facebook can help you. Make it easy to jump in. Just give us a call at 530-301-2931 or visit our website, www.yuba-sutter.live. Yuba-Sutter's home of live streaming and live streaming tools, live streaming services, technology, and training. Live streaming is Yuba-Sutter.live.
Turn my microphone on. Now we're really back in order. Fellow council members, I would very much like to table item number 12 till the next meeting. It is long, it is complicated, and it has a lot of public interest. And by the time you get to 9 o'clock in a council meeting, I think this should be high on the next agenda in terms of where it sits in priority, and it can be discussed at a high level with a lot of public input. And so
I have no problem with that.
I'm moving to table. I can make that motion to table, I presume. I'm making a motion to table. I need a second on that.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of tabling until the next meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
I was ready to have a conversation today.
Well, let's have a roll call vote then. Motion to table has been first and seconded. Roll call vote.
We have Councilmember Belza.
With my boxing gloves on, no.
Councilmember Gilchrist.
The motion to move.
You're voting yes or no?
No.
What's that? To table it.
To table it, yes, I'm voting to table it. Yes.
He's an aye.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yeah, table it.
Vice Mayor Buttacoli.
No.
And Mayor Branscombe.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to public hearing. Let's see. All matters in this section of the agenda are formal public hearings and we've acted on individually. Members of the public may request to speak when called upon for public comment. If you'd like to comment and you're attending this meeting in person, please complete a speaker's card, return it to the city clerk, and when called upon, go to the podium and address the council. If you are participating via Zoom and like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom. When you're called on by the city clerk, you'll be unmuted and you can address the city council. Whether you are here in person or attending via Zoom, when called upon, please give your name clearly for audio recording. If you have any documentation that you'd like to distribute to council, send it to the city clerk at 526 East Street, Marysville, California, 95901. And item on the agenda for public hearing, a recommendation, pass a motion. 1, have council conduct the noticed public hearing to receive comments regarding proposed changes to the City of Marysville fee schedule, and 2, adopt an appropriately numbered resolution to adopt the fee schedule with the recommended changes and rescind all resolutions in conflict therewith. And this will be presented by Ms. Jennifer Stachinsky, Finance Director. Please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So we are coming to you today with a recommended change to our fee schedule. This is something that we should bring to the council on a yearly basis. It was last brought June 15th of 2021, so it was brought back recently. However, that was done with just a few minor changes to cannabis and to adding the pedicab. So this was just an overall analysis of the fee schedule to make sure that what we currently are charging is in line. The only sections that we did change within the fees was just updating the wastewater section. The current section was the rates from 2013. Obviously, they have changed, so that section has been updated. When it comes to other fees across the board, no changes are being recommended, just some administrative cleanup. Some of the items is we have a swimming pool section. The city does not own the swimming pool, so we wanted to remove them out. Mervin's Feather River Pavilion was listed throughout. It's Cotton Rosser Pavilion. So it was cleanup changes like that. Under the discussion analysis section of the staff report, I outlined what those changes are. What we would like to do is in the future is we do want to do a further analysis of a fee schedule. Looking through it, police and fire have actually done a great job. Pretty much a yearly basis, or as things change, they bring it to council and we update the fee schedule. These sections for public works and community development have not been updated for quite a long time. I have worked with community development and public works a little bit to start working on updating this and getting us closer to Yuba City and surrounding areas. But until we actually have those director positions filled, we'll probably wait until we can actually start working with the community development director and public works to actually looking at our fees and bring back that further analysis. So this time it's just an administrative cleanup. In the past, everything had different types, different spacing, everything. So we actually have a fee schedule to put online that is actually attractive to read instead of a mess and sideways and skewed that hasn't been looked at in several years, just part of having things updated. And then throughout time, when we get directors, we'll come back with more cleanup for actual fees to be changed. At this time, just wastewater and administrative. So that is all I have at this time.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Jennifer, I hate to put mundane routine in this, but maybe you can help me clarify. I was under the impression that the city had a vested interest in the Marysville High School swimming pool and that we owned a portion of that.
We currently do not have that listed under our insurance.
Well,
So I'm not aware of us having a vested interest. I haven't heard that.
I only say that because 25 years ago, when I was a reserve firefighter for the city of Marysville, we were allowed to go down there and swim as city employees because the city owned the pool. So something may have happened over time that might be worth looking a little bit into on that. And if I'm wrong, I'm cool. I just thought I'd bring that up. Not that I like throwing kinks in anybody's gears.
We can look at who has real interest in the property at this point.
Right. I know that at some point prior to my tenure on the council too, that we used to budget giving the high school money to maintain the swimming pool because it was reported part ours.
Yeah, I have not seen any budget or any fiscal impact to the city on the swimming pool in the 6 years that I've been employed here.
Okay. Well, I just hate to throw it out, maybe the bathwater when there might still be some use for that water.
We'll take a look at it. It might take, based on other research, it might take a bit to unravel it all. Right. Yeah. So we can take a look at it.
Yeah, we can. That's okay.
It might be a question for our historian, John Mallon or somebody like that.
So if I could ask Brant, would that be a problem if we needed to put it back in for some reason to be able to come back and do an amendment for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, we're not collecting any fees.
No, we have not collected any fees, and I have no knowledge.
I don't know if there's any harm for the change that we're doing now. If we find historically that we have some interest, we'll deal with that.
I don't either. I just, thought I'd bring it up. A little bit of knowledge I got in my brain.
Question?
Proceed.
We done? Yeah. We discussed this before, and I didn't go through the whole 60 pages because I just got this Friday. So it says the update on the insurance liability limits with the Cotton Rosser Pavilion. And we discussed that at one time, I believe. Without me going through all 60 pages, what is the limit? What are we trying to raise the limit to? Because I know in the last discussion, it was exuberant in these different amounts because I happen to regularly.
So per talking to the city attorney, the minimum is 2 million. The original amount that was in the old fee schedule was $500,000.
Was what?
Was 500,000.
Oh, okay. So we're only going to 2 million.
Correct.
That's what the new fee schedule is going to show is you need to have a $2 million policy.
Yes.
Okay. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any input from the public on this, Madam Clerk?
No comments tonight, Mayor.
No comment from the public. Do we have any other questions, comments from the council? Seeing none, what's the will of the council? Hold it. Public hearing over. Do I do that now? Public hearing over. Thank you. Good to have the lawyer nearby. Let's see. And the will of the council on this, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
A second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That sounded unanimous, Madam Clerk. And with that, we can return to the last page. Why don't we combine committee reports with any council comments and get it all done at once? Councilman Belzil, committee report and any comments that you'd like to share above and beyond?
No, neither. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Gilchrist.
I have no comments at this time.
No committee reports. Councilman Hudson.
I have no committee reports, and I thank you for reserving the opportunity of comments, but at this particular time, I have no more comments. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Butterfield.
The only thing I have is on committees. We have been working, and I think somewhat moving forward on getting the fence done at the ball field. I've gotten kind of an expert that's going to sit down with Jim and I to see if what we've proposed is going to work. And I think we're having a few issues there that we're going to need to iron out. But in general, I think we're moving forward. Lastly, I was just, the understanding is that with our ball field, softball fields, looks like there's some interest to do some kind of an event there. Didn't you send that out? With the SALA, with the SALA people?
So if I can.
And so that's a little bit
possible. Well, it is part of our recreation committee, but we're waiting to get a couple things. SALA, who did that, really kind of led the charge in that whole effort of cleaning up initially. They want to have a baseball game there, but like to see the stands done and the paint completed, so there's a finished product, so to speak. So I don't know what any updates are on any of that, but
on the stands, there was a lot of who's on first type thing going on, to be honest with you. So I think Vice Mayor and I need to talk about the wood source, and then we'll get our staff to move forward on getting the wood so that we can put those back together. The painting of the snack bar area looks like that would be moving forward with American Legion painting it. We'll provide the paint for them. So both of those things should be happening.
thank you to the chair. I do actually have
yes,
one comment request.
Please.
I know I'd like to see something in the next handful of meetings, possibly. I know we had a pretty thorough analysis done that took over a year on Ellis Lake. And I'm wondering if there's some type of a presentation or something that we can receive. That was completed in April. And I know I get field many calls every week about what's happening, what's going on, what's happening. And so just somewhere in the next couple of meetings or something, if we could have
I can give you I have a quick update when I get to mine, but we could do a more thorough one later.
And when you get to yours, would you please remind me when the next Ellis Lake Committee meeting is?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Sorry.
What time?
I believe it's 9 o'clock, but let me.
Oh, there it is, Marysville. Oh, yeah, Lake, 0900 Lake. I've got it.
Got it? Okay.
Okay.
That was the easiest answer I gave all night.
So there we go. Let's see. So you're gonna get a response on that. There you go. Anything else from council? I don't have much beyond what I've already gone on about tonight, so I'll leave it there. Madam Clerk, council correspondence.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Each council member has received a letter actually 2 letters from Judy Mann. One dated the 10th of October regarding our sister city, and the other is an email from her as maybe a recap of last council meeting dated October 9th. And each council member has a hard copy in their inbox.
Mr. City Manager, anything else to report?
I figure we'll probably be here till 10. No, kidding. So just a couple of things. Salvation Army is having their 2021 Red Kettle Kickoff Luncheon on Thursday, November 4th. And this year they are honoring our police chief, Chief Sachs, with the 2021 Spirit of Giving Award. In addition to his police duties, he also volunteers as the president of the Yuba-Sutter Yuba Homeless Consortium. And so if you're able to attend that and honor the chief, that would be great. The second thing is regarding Ellis Lake and the cleanup. I did attend the POD meeting, which is the project and operations meeting prior to it going to their full board, and they approved both to move forward and are recommending to the full board the Foslock and carp removal treatments, as well as we had asked them for a $12,550,000 grant to do the historic evaluation at Ellis Lake, which you guys approved on consent tonight. What that means is rather than general fund money being spent, we would have a different funding source for that. So that does look like it's moving forward as far as the water cleanup. And then the last thing, I believe I talked to all council members about this. Caltrans has approached us on doing a beautification project down where the pedestrian overpass is, the spiral overpass ramps, and I have directed them towards Mr. Reed and the Arts Council to work through that issue and figure out how they will maintain the artwork in the future. Yeah, and I made that clear to them.
Question on the meeting for tomorrow. Where will the final approval come to say go with the Foslock and the carp removal?
My understanding is it goes to the pod, and that, which is their kind of like finance.
Not the money, because our last meeting we were like, we're going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're going to drain it. No, we're going to do the Foslock. Where is that final decision made? Is it going to hopefully tomorrow? Or does that committee have that power to do that?
They have the power, they seem inclined, and I think it's unproductive to ask them if they're going to go ahead, because they look like they're up on their toes, ready to write the check.
Well,
I'm not talking about money. Remember the last meeting, there was still discussion if we were going to not do it.
I discussed that. I'll just be transparent here again. I discussed that with Yuba Water staff, and just like most other grants, if we were to change what we were going to do, Foslock and carp removal versus something else, that we would have to approach them again and get approval for something else. You can't just change what you're proposing.
I guess what I'm asking is, can our committee tomorrow say, yes, start, we have the money?
No, because we have to go to the full board yet. So there's one more approval process through their process.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was curious about.
Can't do it quite yet.
Okay.
I was going to look up when their next board meeting is, but I didn't have a chance to do it today.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you.
Mercifully, we are at the next meeting announcement. Next regular meeting will be held Tuesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. Just a reminder that the December 21st council meeting has been canceled in honor of the holidays. Adjourned.
Josh.